seated, and just wanted to announce a couple things before we begin services for Lillian Ungerleider. If you have a cell phone, if you wouldn't mind either turning the cell phone off or just putting it on the vibrate mode, we would appreciate it. And services for Lillian will be officiated by Rabbi Alex Lazarus Klein and Cantor Arlene Frank. Thank you very much.
We're blessed to be together to be able to say goodbye to Lil Ungerleider, and it's always a really hard time. This was a very important space to her and to Ben, and we're glad to be able to host her memorial here and to really pay homage to someone who contributed so much to our community. We're going to begin with something called Kriya, which is the tearing of the ribbon. I'm going to invite the immediate family members, all of her children, to stand. Karen, Jerry, Debbie, Vicky, and Jonathan, if you would stand over there. Pinned to each of them is a black ribbon. This is a way to tear our clothing at these times. For thousands of years, it's just an instinct that we would tear our clothing when we had a loss. And we carry a little bit of that with us in this black ribbon. What we're going to do is we're going to recite a blessing together in Hebrew, and this is a blessing that goes back 2,000 years, and it's said during bad tidings. And the black ribbon itself is meant to be worn for all of you over your heart, in general for 1 week, but it really depends on the custom of the family, not including Shabbat. And so the week would go through next Thursday. And it is a reminder of her on you. You can feel her presence. It's also a reminder to all of us. When we see you, we should be a little bit more gentle with you. And it's a reminder to you to be gentle to yourself. Grief takes a lot out of us, and it's really, really important that we take extra care and not expect ourselves to just be able to do things as normal. So if you could just repeat the words of the blessing after me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam dayan ha'amet. That means, blessed are you, God, King of the universe, Judge of truth. If you want to go to the bottom of the ribbon, and what you're going to do is tear up. So feel the bottom of the ribbon. You just want to make it look torn. That's the only purpose of it. So go to the very bottom of the ribbon. Some of them are a little bit harder than others. And if you're having trouble, we'll get Jay over here. He has a helper. Jay, we might need some help over here with the ribbons. So, they're built strong. Also a reminder, if for some reason you do lose this over the course of the week, it has no bearing on your mother's love of you. We offer the words of consolation, Adonai natan lecha ki hishem Adonai mevarach. God has given, God has taken, blessed be the name of God. You may be seated. I also want to welcome anyone who's joining us on the stream. I know people from around the world. We're touched by Lillian's life, and we're grateful to be able to bring you here. Believe me, the family is very appreciative of your presence, of all of your presence. And we're grateful to be able to really memorialize today a wonderful, wonderful life well lived. We're going to begin in our leaflet here. And if you'll open it up, Psalm 23 is on the right-hand side. I'm going to invite Cantor Arlene Frank up to chant this for us.
Adonai roi lachsar v'rodeshe yarbitzeni amem menuchot yitnahaleni nashir shaveh yancheni v'magritzat ידפוני כל ימי חיי ישרתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים.
We can read together in the English on the right-hand side. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. I'd like to invite up Jonathan to address us about his mother's wonderful life. I think we're going to have him come over here, right to this microphone. And you can bring the platform up if that's helpful. The stand, sorry.
Thank you, Rabbi. So, in thinking about my mom, I kind of thought about what is a super mom? And just in case you didn't know, my mom, Lillian Cassover, born in Philadelphia in 1932, grew up with two older brothers, Nathan and Charlie, in Philadelphia. Her father, Abraham, immigrated from Russia as a boy and worked as a real estate broker. Her mother, Rose, born in the US, kept up the domestic duties. Summers were spent in a rented apartment in Atlantic City, where they traded the oppressive heat and humidity of the city for the boardwalk ocean breezes. Her father worked in Philadelphia during the week and joined them down the shore on the weekends. It was before the time of air conditioning. Lil, as she was known to her friends, attended Penn State College. She met my dad there, a handsome, tall, and relatively quiet engineering student who was a year ahead of her. Committed to my dad, Ben, she planned to graduate a year early so they could be married. She graduated Phi Beta Kappa with a Bachelor of Arts in 3 years. You go, girl. I was once asked when I was taught by a stranger to me, who do I love more, mom or dad? Before I could work out the answer, he said a friendly, never mind, and at his suggestion, I arrived at the conclusion at that moment that I loved them both equally. Not that they were both the same. Oh no, you'd never find my mom in any of the detail-oriented, time-wasting projects my dad could be engrossed in, but neither would you find my dad immersed in mystery novels and taking a weekly trip to the library to return and check out the latest library acquisitions. Growing up, ignorant of the world, my mom seemed pretty ordinary to me. Fast forward a few decades, and I realized how extraordinary she was. She raised 5 children, which on its own is impressive. Factor in my oldest sister, Jerry, was just 2 when the twins, Debbie and Vicky, were born. Lil had to care for 3 little girls under 3 without disposable diapers. Also consider at this time her husband, Ben, took a little hiatus from being a father when he was drafted during the Korean War. During his basic training, my mom moved into the apartment above her father's office on Pine Street in Philadelphia. She would make him lunch, and he got to see his grand girls every day. After basic training, she, my dad, Jerry, Debbie, and Vicky had to move as Ben was stationed in Huntsville, Alabama at Redstone Arsenal. While there in Huntsville, my mom learned about grits, greens, and many things Southern during her stay in Alabama, which would later come out as I discovered some of these things like okra for myself. Fast forward a few years, the Pennsylvania parents moved to North Brunswick, New Jersey, where they enjoyed Jersey tomatoes and corn, grew fruit trees in their yard, and birthed my sister Karen. In 1965, my family moved to Buffalo, following my father, who began working for Scott Aviation. And just when everything was settled in, I was born in Buffalo. Even with 5 children, once we were old enough and in school, my mom would not be denied a career. She got a master's degree and became an elementary school teacher at the Cheektowaga Central School District, where she taught 3rd grade initially and then 5th grade, and challenged the minds of just about 25 years of students with the word of the day and her very organized classroom style. I always thought of her as the strict teacher and mom. My mom was a super mom. In addition to working full-time, she cooked us dinner, including holiday meals, and packed many lunches. Many mornings before she left for work, she would put in a load of laundry or get dinner started. On Saturday mornings, she rallied and organized the entire family into a cleaning team, keeping the house spick and span. My sisters and I may not have liked it at the time, but we all got to live in a clean house, and we learned how to keep it clean. She shuttled me for years to before and after school band rehearsals, sports, music lessons, Sunday and Hebrew school right here. She did the grocery shopping and bought me clothes. I loathed going clothes shopping, but she was no ordinary shopper. My mom found great joy in finding bargains. Even until her final days, she was still telling us about the deal she got when she bought my dad's desk, or the time when she stood in line, I went with her, before the department store opened to get the deal on the discounted Beaterlack blankets. And even though my dad took care of the finances, it was her salary and thrifty shopping that kept us going when my dad's entrepreneurial spirit convinced him to run his own business briefly. When I was old enough, I was taught to be responsible without knowing it. One of the ways my mom accomplished this was by leaving some coded and not so coded messages on the refrigerator wet erase board. I was trained to read it when I came home from school. Some days it would have the capital letters MTDW, empty dishwasher. Other days it would say JD, fold clothes. I'm JD, Jonathan David. During the summer, when she was on summer vacation, she showed me how to deal with the English ivy growing in beds on 2 sides of the house, so it didn't get out of control and grow up the siding. My mom showed me how to use a hand pruner to trim the ivy in the beds. After seeing how long it took to do this, it made me think of a faster way, and I took it a step further, and I used the electric hedge trimmer on the sides, not the top, as a way to speed up the work. She also gave me the front door to paint, and while my paint job may not have been perfect, it taught me some important life lessons, like don't try to touch up the paint as it's drying. And yes, I can paint. My mom spent many days next door having a cup of coffee with her friend Carm Atera. Both natives of Pennsylvania and now Buffalo, they hit it off. Despite being of different nationalities and different religions, Russian, Hungarian Jews, and Italian Catholics, they were neighbors and friends in a way that I've never been able to replicate with any of my neighbors. Some of my favorite times were when my family joined the Ateros at their home to celebrate New Year's Eve. There were wonderful homemade Italian Christmas cookies. I love the ones with the nuts and the powdered sugar. And the pizzelles. After we finished watching the ball drop in Times Square, Carm would pull out an array of special foods. I noticed how much my mom enjoyed eating the shrimp cocktail. Eating kosher style at home, we never ate shrimp, or so I thought. And we always played games, card and board. I think our favorite was Pictionary, and Carm's son Mark and I would team up to become a nearly unbeatable nearly unbeatable as we competed in the game of quick draw against our moms. So what brought my mom the greatest joy in her life? She loved good food and some not so good food, as I saw when after eating an egg roll with hot mustard, she suffered a gallbladder attack. She was also an adventurous eater and not afraid to try a new recipe she liked in the newspaper. She became famous for her broccoli puff, black bean soup, creamed tuna, stuffed cabbage, pumpkin bread, fudge meltaways, cream de menthe bars, Hamantaschen, and pancakes, and I'm sure much more. And she made the spread for my sister Karen's bat mitzvah, which was right here, and right afterwards in the social hall, it was filled with tables of blintzes and other food. I was 6 years old. My mother made all of that and put it in the freezer, the second freezer downstairs, and pulled it all out and served that to everyone for Karen's bat mitzvah. Yep, she loved playing games and staying active too. She bowled with her teacher friends on Thursday evenings. Although she didn't smoke cigarettes, you wouldn't know it because her coat always reeked when she came home from bowling night. During the summers on Tuesdays, she played golf with the teachers, and she's the reason I learned to golf. She did the crosswords and word jumbles in the Buffalo News. She attended water aerobics at volleyball at the Canterbury pool, played bridge and canasta with her friends at Canterbury, and played Rummy Cube, cards, Uno, Pictionary, Taboo, and more with family when they came to visit. She remained a fierce competitor in all of these games and did not go easy with her grandchildren just because they were cute. Her Phi Beta Kappa skills showed in her formidable knowledge, especially in Scrabble and Trivial Pursuit. She loved to read. That was her routine after work and after dinner. She would sit in her recliner and read mystery books. And she loved TV. Not just any show, but loved evening TV shows like Magnum. And she could predict which shows would be successful. Although technology was not her focus, she was not afraid to use it. She was a relatively early adopter of the microwave and VCR, thanks to her son-in-law, Fred, who worked for GE at the time. She even mastered programming the VCR to record shows to watch later. And she loved her children, especially her grandchildren, as only a bubby could, with bubby hugs and kisses and adoration for all 10 of her grandchildren and even the 3 newest grandchildren, great-grandchildren. She had room in her heart for all of them. Just to add a little more perspective, my mom was a survivor many times over. If she survived 5 children, it would have been enough. Diana. Over the better part of 40 years, she had a hysterectomy, a pesky gallbladder removed, survived breast cancer, had a heart valve replacement, cataracts removed, and a hip replacement. Diana. Now that life experience has given me perspective, I see that my mom was no ordinary mom. She's a super mom. Thank you.
Jonathan, I so appreciate your words, and I know you also compiled and talking with your sisters and the rest of your family. Thank you so much for representing that whole section, broad section of your mother's life. What an incredible journey. We're going to now hear from that second generation. One of the 10, Alexis, is going to come up to speak about her grandmother, her bubby.
As I'm standing here, I'm picturing Bubby sitting at the dinner table, elbow on the table, fist in the air, waiting knowingly for one finger at a time to stand at attention when I subconsciously dot my story with a like or an Once a teacher, always a teacher, right? I'd like to believe I mostly grew out of all the likes, but I have yet to grow out of not having perfect grammar, and that fact I was reminded of each visit, which is why I have double and triple checked what I'm about to say, so fingers crossed. Food was Bubby's love language. I have fond memories of Hanukkah, Passover at Bubby's house, rich with the smell of brisket, latkes, and matzo balls. We all adored her matzo ball soup, but most often it was dotted with parsley. We happily ate her Brussels sprouts, even Jacob and Isaac, but parsley and matzo balls? No way. Her subtle gesture of love for her grandkids came in the form of a small pot that was filled with plain matzo balls, and they were perfect. Besides the holidays, my favorite memories of her growing up were the days she would greet me when I got off the school bus, the house filled with the smell of fresh baked brownies, extra chocolatey and deliciously gooey. If I was lucky, she made taco salad for dinner with that crispy homemade tortilla bowl. Her presence and her meals were consistent, warm, and thoughtful. I learned many years later that her fancy brownies were just store-bought mix with chocolate chips sprinkled on top. A blessing that means I'll always be able to make it. Then came the Camp Canterbury days, when she would bring Isaac to her aqua aerobics class, where he would sit on the side of the pool, being fawned over by all the ladies, and waiting patiently or not so patiently until it was his turn to swim with Bubby. Of course, then there were the dinners at Canterbury. They were always a special treat. Even though she wasn't cooking for us, the order what you want, you could get 2 appetizers if you want, became her new signature, a Bubbyism of love, if you will. Our family's love for board games, as well as our penchant for the competitive spirit, is owed to Bubby. Playing Scrabble with her was like going to battle, armed with her dictionary, her intelligence, and her quick wit. You knew she was gonna kick your ass. But you played hoping without hope that you could beat her, even just once. Because it didn't matter if you were 5 or 25, she would never let you win. She forced you to be your best and on your toes, whether you liked it or not. Bubby was a pillared matriarch, a vessel of knowledge, sarcastic wit, a caring warmth. She epitomized a Bubby, and she was mine, and she was ours, and she will be deeply missed. May her memory be a blessing.
Oh, yes, we have another speaker. We have Jerry is going to speak about her.
Before I start speaking, I just want to let you know I'm the oldest sibling, and I am 16 years older than Jonathan. So I am speaking from a slightly different perspective as the oldest of 5. So, I'm gonna get my tissue ready.
We have tissues.
I do. I'm fine. Thank you. Thank you. As the eldest of 5, my perspective of my mother is just a little bit different from what Jonathan shared with you. I was born into firstborn bliss with 2 mothers in tow, my own and my doting grandmother, Rose Cassover. I don't remember much of those first years, but photos showed I was always beautifully dressed, hair shining, and usually mouthing off about something and hamming it up for the camera. We lived above my grandfather Abe's Philadelphia real estate office on Pine Street in a very tiny 1-bedroom apartment. There were 3 girls. The twins had arrived 2.5 years later, and Mom and Dad. My mom and grandmother were great cooks, as you've heard, even back then, and despite the cramped quarters, we had many wonderful holiday meals together with my mom's brothers, Nathan and Charlie, and their families. Dad got a new job, and we were off to idyllic, back then, North Brunswick, New Jersey. Mom developed a new best friend across the street, Mrs. Lillian. I am not sure what Mom was doing during these years, but I know she was driving us to lessons and to classes and driving and driving. I had ballet lessons, and I had Hebrew lessons, and I had Girl Scouts and piano lessons. And I'm guessing the twins had the same. And then Karen arrived, and more lessons. And in the winter, I remember Mom and Dad walking across the highway that I called Route 130, if any of you know it in New Jersey, to ice skate at the pond on the other side. And at least once a month, my grandparents, Rose and Abe Cassover, drove in from Philadelphia with the back seat loaded with day-old pumpernickel, being frugal again, and rye bread from the Jewish bakery in Philly. And this all got unloaded and frozen in the giant upright freezer we had in the garage. And my mom and my grandmother filled that freezer with homemade sheets and sheets of blintzes, which were cheese and potato, Hamantaschen, honey cakes, and more. We did eat well, but I do remember that once in a while we did get to have a TV dinner because Dad was out of town. Leaving this circular-shaped neighborhood with its babbling brooks that I spent hours playing in was very hard for me, but I can only imagine what my mother was feeling, to have to move again. But she never expressed any regrets, and onward we went to Buffalo. And off to Buff State she went to get her teaching credentials. These were very busy years for her, raising 4 girls while teaching. Most likely she was missing her parents' visits, who were now a 7-hour drive away. But one thing she did for me, which I still find amazing to this day, was to allow me to teach piano lessons in our living room. I taught on Saturday afternoons, after we cleaned the house, and Sundays, and she let me have an annual concert in our house for the students and their parents. Mom also drove me to my weekly piano lessons with Carlo Pinto of blessed memory, who was professor of piano at UB. She stayed for the entire hour in her car, in his driveway, while reading a mystery book. What else? They were her favorites. But there were challenges ahead. My dad lost his job as I was applying to college. I went to UB as a commuter student, taking the bus, which required my mother driving me home from the bus stop every evening. It was a huge inconvenience for both of us. I was only 16, I had no car, but she never complained. But I did. I finally got my wish. My dad started work again at Analab, and I transferred to Stony Brook. Let's jump ahead for another example of my level-headed mother. Back in 1980, over Memorial Weekend, my husband-to-be, Fred, tells Mom that he has a window open around the July 4th weekend for us to get married. Well, this did not seem to faze Mom at all. She called Rabbi Kerman, of blessed memory, and he was free. And the rest is history. She and my wonderful sisters planned a beautiful wedding in Williamsville, New York, while Fred and I were still living in Cleveland. And Mom to the rescue again. There is no better sight in the world than seeing your mother beside her car in your driveway on your way home from the hospital with your firstborn. Bless her for driving in from Buffalo early in the day to come to help me as a new mother. Being a parent, and Mom is not an easy job, I can attest to that. I've raised 3 of my own, but I think in the big picture, our mother has done a pretty good job. The road has not been easy for her. As a young college-aged woman, she dreamed of becoming a journalist and wrote for the school paper at Penn State. But alas, this was not to be, since her father, Abe, announced that this was not an appropriate profession for a young woman. At the young age of 67, the same age that I am now, Mom moved into Canterbury Woods with my dad because she could no longer care for him at home. He had developed early onset Alzheimer's, and this was a huge change for both of them. My mother had to look out for his safety and care while trying to save her own sanity. This was extremely traumatic for all of us, but mainly for Mom. I hope I have shed some light on what a very special mother I was blessed with. While we did not always agree, she did listen. She only broke my young heart once when I auditioned for a summer musical position at Chautauqua. I only received a partial scholarship for the summer, but she wouldn't let me go. She was so frugal and I was so distraught. I can laugh about it now, but it was her frugality that got all 5 of us through college and some of us through grad school. Mom has given generous annual Hanukkah gifts to all 5 of us and annual Hanukkah gifts to her grandchildren for many years. Bless you, Mom, wherever you are, and I hope you're listening.
Thank you, Jerry and Alexis and Jonathan. I think it's wonderful that the dedication to someone who really understood the power of language is in written words, and these are keepsakes for the family. Let's just take a moment to take all those words in. It really captured so much of Lillian's life and what she meant to us. There's really not much for me to add to it, but I want to offer an image from the end of the book of Exodus that we read today and tomorrow. The portion is called Pikudei, and at the very end, after we've left Egypt, we're in the wilderness, the Torah offers us an image of God as a loving protector, a fire by the day, and that's what we see over here, and the fire by night and the clouds by day. And this is God's way of watching over us in the wilderness. I think this is a way we can imagine Lil. She had so much fire in her life, so much drive for her family, for this world, and the clouds. Sometimes she could be gentle too. She had just a spirit about her that could watch over us. So if you could imagine for you, not just God watching over us in that way, but your mom, your relative, your friend, whoever is gathered here, that we should always imagine not that she's gone, not just that she's gone from this world, but that she is there as a fire to lead us any night that we need, and clouds that will lead us during the day throughout our journeys. May it always be so, and may her memory always be for a blessing. We're going to turn to the memorial prayers, and I'm going to invite Cantor Frank up again. It's called the Il Malei Rachamim. It's a prayer that we say. We hope that her soul makes her way to Ben and to all of her ancestors safely. We're going to invite everyone to rise. As luck would have it, we had her name in our files, in addition to the Ketubah. So, Leah, bat Avraham Yitzchak.
Im Kedoshim
read together in the English. Lord, full of mercy, who dwells on high, find fitting rest upon the wings of your Shekhinah, divine presence, in the heights, the holy and pure, who shine like the glow of the firmament for the soul of Lillian Ungerleider, who has gone to her eternal world. For we pray in memory of her soul, may her resting place be in the Garden of Eden. Therefore, may the Master of Mercy shelter her in the shelter of God's wings forever. May God bind her soul in the bond of life. The Lord is her inheritance. May she rest peacefully upon her resting place. And let us say, Amen.